Daf Yomi tractate Bava Batra, page 89b. We were at the idea, it was just a continuation, answering a question from the previous Amud at the bottom. It says, since the function of each type of the balance scale is mentioned with the exception of the first type, the Gemara asks, and that large balance scale, which is mentioned first, for what is it used? El hach kaima demai. Now we're on top of 89b. Rav Papa, it is not Wednesday, meaning Rav Papa stationed on Wednesday. Today's Sunday, and therefore it's seen in the light of Wednesday, but it's still Sunday. And what's the connection? The very special connection. If you look into Genesis chapter 1, you will see that light was created on the first day. But this is not sunlight. This is just light itself. And then Wednesday comes, and then it says that God created the two great lights, the great light by day and the smaller light by night. Presumably that's the sun and the moon. It seems like that's the sun and the moon. So that's the connection. There was someone that I knew that connected different Amoraim to different days of the week, and Rav Papa was Wednesday, meaning Yom Revi'i, the fourth day. So with that, that's sort of the process that is being used here, and I think it's a great memory technique to connect these different Amoraim with days of the week, like they're stationed in this day of the week. Like Rabbi Akiva is stationed in Thursday, for example. Why? There's many reasons, but one reason is because he shows up in Bava on page 5, Daf Hey on the top for the first time, and then why Bava is another thing. But there's reasons, and once you keep reviewing these reasons, they become basically like bricks in the building, and they're reliable. You know, they come around again and again. Maybe that's not a great analogy, not bricks in the building, but like machinery in a car, or pistons. Maybe that's a good maybe analogy. They work. They're working to move the car of memory. Anyway. Rav Papa said today's not Wednesday but it's Sunday. Di Garomi. Rav Papa says it is balance scales for blacksmiths who weigh heavy pieces of metal. Someone just talked about heavy metals. Rav Mani Bar Patish. Rav Mani Bar Patish. Son of a hammer. Rav Mani Bar Patish says, just as the sages said with regard to revision of the scales, that one may not use a scale that does not meet the criteria listed in the Braita, so too they said that this applies with regard to their ritual impurity. In other words, if the cords and pole are not attached in the proper manner, they are not susceptible to ritual impurity as part of the scale. My Kamash Malan. The Gemara asks, what is the statement teaching us? Tanina. We learned in the Mishnah in Kalim 29:5. Chut moznaim shel chenveni v'shel bal batim tafach kana umasdisa shela yitzchachale derotanan. We learned in the Mishnah in Kalim 29:5, with regard to the rope from which the scales are suspended, if the balance scale belongs to a storekeeper or to homeowners, it must be 1 handbreadth in length for it to be susceptible to ritual impurity. Why then is the statement of Rabbi Mani Bar Patish necessary? The Gemara answers, although the Mishnah in Tractate Kalim discusses the rope from which the scales are suspended, it was still necessary for Rabbi Mani Bar Patish to mention the halachos with regard to the scales, lever and cord, for which We did not learn in that Mishnah. Pull the strings! Pull the strings! Tanu Ramanan enois mishkolois. Loi shel bat v'loi shel avar. V'loi shel gistaroin. V'loi shel shalmine matochois. Avar oisehi hu shel sunma shel zchuchis. The sages taught one may not prepare weights of tin, nor of lead, nor of metal alloy, which is gistaron, nor of any other types of metal, because of these deteriorate over time. The buyer will ultimately pay for more merchandise than he receives, but one may prepare weights of hard rock and glass. Tanu Rabanan, בפני שהוא קל ולא של מתכס, בפני שהוא מכביד, אבל עושה של זייס ושל אגו של שיקמו ושל אש בועה. The sages further taught one may not prepare the leveler, used to remove the excess from the mouth of a vessel from a gourd, because it is a light material and does not level effectively, thereby causing a loss for the seller, and it may not be made of metal because it weighs down and removes too much of the merchandise, leading to a loss for the buyer. But one may prepare it from the wood of an olive tree, or of a nut tree, or of a sycamore tree, or of a boxwood tree, which are of medium weight. Tanu Rabanan, mirabagaret and abraise noisin esamecha ktzido yechod av ktzido yechod katzar lo yimchok bevas achas. שהמויחק בבס אחס רע למוכר ויפה ללוקח ולא ימחוק מעט מעט שרע ללוקח ויפה למויחר. The sages taught one may not prepare the leveler in such a manner that if one of its sides is thick and the other side is thin, because in such a case the two sides do not level equally. Furthermore, one may not level all at once by a single quick movement, as one who levels all at once acts in a manner that is bad for the seller and is good for the buyer, because he removes less of the excess than one who levels in the regular fashion. And conversely, one may not level little by little, meaning with several slow movements, as this is bad for the buyer and good for the seller. Al Kulan. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. What is Sunday? Oy li im oimer. Oy li im loy oimer. Im oimer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is Yom Rishon. I don't know why. Yom Zion. It could be Shabbos also. Yom Zion, either Shabbat or Sunday. Yochanan ben Zakkai. Oy li, oimer, im loy oimer, im oimer shema yilmenu haramoin, v'im lo oimer shema yilmenu haramoin, ein tamid chachamim beki'in b'ma'aseh yadenu, yiboiluhu amre o lo amre, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Amra umehaikra amra ki yeshorim darchi Hashem v'tzadikim yelchu bam uposhim yikashlu bam. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said with regard to all these halachot, woe to me if I say them, and woe unto me if I do not say them. If I say them, perhaps swindlers will learn new methods of cheating, of which they were previously unaware. And if I do not say them, perhaps swindlers will say, Torah scholars are not well versed in our handiwork. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Did Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai decide to say these halachot in public, or did he not say them? Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak says he said them, and he said them on the basis of this verse. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the just walk in them, but transgressors stumble over them. Hosea 14:10. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braisa, Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat, b'midah, b'mishkal, uv'mesura. במידה זו מדידת קרקע שלא ימדוד לאחד בימות החמה אלא בימות הגשמים במשקל שלא יטמין משקלותיו במלח במשורה שלא ירתיח. The Gemara further discusses weights and measures. The sages taught, you shall do no unrighteousness in judgment, in measure, bamidah, in weight, or in measure. Leviticus 19:35. The Batra defines these terms in measure, bamidah. This is referring to measuring land, teaching that in order to measure land in a just manner, one may not measure for one person in the summer when the measuring rope has become dry and short, and for one other individual in the rainy season when the measuring rope is wet and limp, and therefore stretches more. In weight means that one may not cover his weights in salt, and salt erodes the weights, causing a loss for the buyer. Or in measure, b'mesurah means that one may not cause liquid he is measuring to foam by pouring it speedily, as this results in a loss for the buyer, who receives less of the liquid than the amount for which he paid. V'kal v'chomer, umah meshura shehi echad משלושים ושיש בלוי הקפידה עליו תורה קל וחומר להן וחציהן ושלישיסהן רביעיסהן ולוג וחצי לוג רביעיס וחצי תומן ואוכלה. The Gemara notes that it can be inferred by means of an a fortiori inference that if in the case of a mesura, which is a measure equivalent to merely 1/36 of a log, the Torah was particular that one must measure honestly, so to a fortiori one must be careful in the case of 1 hin and 1/2 hin and 1/3 of a hin and 1/4 hin, which is 12 log, and 1 log and 1/2 log and 1/4 log and 1/2 toman, which is 1/16 of a kav, and even an ukla, a smaller unit as defined below. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Asur l'adam sheyashhe mida chasera o yisera b'toch beiso afilu hi avit shel meimei raglaim. Amar Rav Papa, it is not Wednesday. Rav Papa said, he didn't say it's not Wednesday, I'm saying it's not Wednesday. And yet I'm saying Rav Papa. Lo amran ela be'asra de lo chasimi, aval be'asra de chasimi ilo Chazi Chasimi lo Shakil Uviasra de lo Chasimi Nami lo Amran Ella de lo Mehandasi Aval Mehandasi Leislan Bat. Yehuda says that Rav says it is prohibited for a person to keep in his house a measure that is too small or is too large than its supposed volume or weight, and this is the case even if he does not measure it with, but simply uses it as a chamber pot for urine. Rav Papa said it is not Wednesday, although it is Sunday. Still, it's not Wednesday. Rav Papa said on Sunday we said this prohibition only with regard to a place where measures are not stamped with the government's seal, which confirms that the measure is accurate, but in a place where the measures are stamped, if the buyer does not see the seal, he would not take the merchandise. Since they could not be used dishonestly, one is permitted to utilize these measures for other purposes, and in a place where measures are not stamped as well, we said that it is prohibited to keep these measures in one's house, only in a place where they do not inspect measures to see if they are fit for use. But if they do not inspect measures, we have no problem with it. Velohi, and the Gemara comments, and this is not so. Zimnin de mikare ben ashmashos, umikri v'shakil. Tanya namiyahi lo yesha adam mida chasera o yesera b'toch beso v'afilu hi avit shel meimei raglaim aval osehu sa'a tarkav v'chatzi tarkav v'kav v'chatzi kav rova v'toman v'chatzi toman. The Gemara comments, and that is not so. One is never permitted to keep incorrect measures in his house, and sometimes it happens that one measures at twilight when people are hurried and consequently it happens if the buyer takes the merchandise despite the fact that it was measured with an incorrect measure. This is also taught in Bright. A person may not keep in his house a measure that is too small or too large, even if it is used as a chamber pot for urine, but he may prepare measures in accordance with the established format. Measurements of a sa'ah, tarkov, which is 3 kav or 1/2 of a sa'ah, and a half tarkov, which is 1 and 1/2 kav and a kav, and a half kav and a quarter kav and a tomen, which is 1/8 of a kav and a half tomen.